So this part will be talking about biology hierarchies. A hierarchy is where you have steps, where you start from either small to large or go large to small. So what we're going to do with this one is we're going to talk about one of two hierarchies, and I want you to know them in order. So what we'll do with this one, we'll talk about all the things we're going to discuss in class. And go over that hierarchy. So the idea here is we're going to start. I'm going to start this hierarchy from the very small to the very large. And so when we go through the hierarchy, what I want you to realize is the order they're in, and make sure that you know what includes what. So we'll start with the very smallest. And for our first biology hierarchy, we're going to start with something that really isn't biological, but I think it's important because we discuss it in the class. And that's subatomic particles. And that's kind of the chemistry that we're going to have to be aware of. And so we're talking about protons, neutrons, electrons, and that will be in the chemistry lectures. And you already should know it because technically it's a class requirement, but we will review it. The next one is these particles make up atoms, and then the atoms make up molecules. Put a bunch of molecules together, you get an organelle, and that's a structure inside cells. Add a bunch of organelles together, you end up with a cell. Put a bunch of cells together, you're going to end up with tissue. Put a bunch of tissues together, you're going to end up with organs. A bunch of organs together become an organ system. Organ systems together make up an organism. A bunch of organisms together make up a population. A bunch of populations together make up a community. Communities then are put together into ecosystems. Ecosystems are put into biomes. And last but not least, the biomes are put into what we call the biosphere, which as of today is the planet. But now with the Mars Perseverance Percy that has been set up just recently, they're looking for life. And we'll talk about that just a little bit later. Then that actually could change. But today, life as we know it is a singular thing on this planet. So definitely want to make sure you can go back and forth on this. I might ask you on a test just to kind of give you a concept on how this stuff is dealt with. We might ask you what's larger, what's smaller. Might ask you to put them in order, those kinds of things. So again, we're going from the smallest to the largest in the list that I gave you today. The other hierarchy, so there's really two hierarchies that biologists use, and the second hierarchy is one we use for classification and taxonomy, which we will be doing for the third or fourth exam. I forgot where that fell. That might be in the third exam, actually, I think. But anyway, that doesn't matter. So you might have seen this in a high school class, KPCOFGS. That is one of the two hierarchies and what those stand for, and it is kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. So I want you to know what those stand for. I want you to be able to do these in order. The kingdom being at this point would be the largest grouping, and species is very specific, so that is the smallest grouping. So in theory, all living things should be able to be put into this hierarchy. I will tell you this hierarchy is difficult because people don't agree. It's actually falling apart, but it's still important for you to kind of understand and learn. And I want to make sure you get the idea why we do it. And so I'm going to do a little lecturing on the concept behind it. This is an easy way for us to convey a large amount of information with very few words. So I want to walk through an organism and show you why we do this. And so what I'm going to do is give you the kingdom Animalia. I'm going to start there. Now the reason I'm doing this is there has been a lot of changes. You talk to your grandparents in their education, they might have learned, depending on how old they are, some of your grandparents might have learned two kingdoms, plant and animals. That was it. Then it went to five kingdom system, and I'm telling you that is even being blown up today. But we're going to, in this lecture, kind of stick with the five kingdom system, but then we'll explain toward the end why that is actually different. All right, so kingdom Animalia. So we're talking about an animal, and the question is, what do all animals have in common? It turns out the types of cells they're made out of. They are made out of eukaryotic cells that actually have nuclei and organelles. They are multicellular, which means they're made up of more than one cell, and they are heterotrophic, which means that they actually eat other things. So the minute I tell you it's an animal, you should know those three things. Now that can vary. Some of the earliest animals are sponges, very, very primitive, and then all the way to mammals and humans. So right now you have no idea if I'm talking about a sponge or a human or anything in between, but at least you've got a picture. Now, if I told you the animal that I have is in the phylum Chordata, that immediately changes what it can be. So most of the animals on the planet are not chordates. Chordates are animals with backbones and some other characteristics we'll talk about later. There are some chordates that actually don't have backbones. There's a few, but chordata means that you have a notochord, which is our precursor to the backbone, and some other things. What I want to make sure you understand is then there's lots of animals, actually the majority of the animals would be eliminated. So you might have thought it was a sponge. Probably most of you didn't go there. But if you think of animals, it could be a worm, they don't have backbones. It could be an insect, they don't have backbones. Most animals on the planet are insects. So this really eliminates those. So if you think in chordata now, animals with backbones, typically if I was teaching live with you guys, I would ask you what those are. But reality is things like fish, or it could be an amphibian, like a frog, a reptile, like a lizard. It could be a bird or a mammal. So immediately by telling you that, it gives you some more information. Then you go to class. Okay, class is AVs. What I've done now is I've eliminated a lot of that we just listed. AVs is for birds. So now I know just by telling you, hey, this animal I have is in the class AVs. I know that it has feathers. I know that it is endothermic, which means it regulates its body temperature from within like we do. Matter of fact, birds have a higher metabolism rate and temperature than typically than most mammals. And so now I've kind of limited what this could be. So now I'm looking at, and there's lots of different types of birds. It could be a hummingbird, it could be a finch, a sparrow, it could be a hawk, it could be a vulture, it could be an ostrich. So lots and lots of different things. So, but what you can see from animal coming down that we are now talking about limiting of those ideas. The next order I can give you is Falconiformes. That order will tell you that it either a falcon, a hawk, or an eagle. That eliminates the vultures and eliminates the hummingbirds we talked about, the ostrich, things like that. Then you go into family, and I go to Accipitridae. That is the family. That one probably tells you nothing. If you're a birder, though, that would tell you that it actually eliminates the falcons, such as a peregrine falcon, or our little tiny local one is the American kestrel. So those are gone. So now it's got to be a hawk or an eagle. And then if I tell you the genus Haliaeetus, that probably doesn't mean much to you. But that actually means that it is an eagle. That is an eagle genus. And the species then is Leucocephalus. And if you learn to break down names, if you recognize leuco actually means white, leukocytes are white blood cells in our body. Cephalus or cephalic means head, so this is white head. So what this does means is that it is a bald eagle, our national bird. So again, the whole concept of doing this is to give you information, and having maybe a single term give you a lot of data. So again, kingdom very broad, very general, and then going all the way down to species would be very specific. And so that will end this little lecture. So we will stop that, and we will stop the recording.